the next topic I sort of wanted to go from there, and this is this is one that I've personally been attacked by. Trigger zones. Who decided to rename them?
I have no memory of
who decided to name?
I'm gonna blame Ryga because he isn't here and he's a nice guy.
Yeah,
so
might have been Ryga. I don't. Easy.
I have no idea.
All right, we got our
It was
answer.
probably just whoever was typing into the Unity asset.
Get,
Like it was
get your
probably not a
pitchforks and
considered
torches out.
decision. Yeah.
Yeah, just. Oh my god. But no, seriously, like the renaming of trigger zones to trigger volumes, I don't know why, it just rattles my cage. You know,
I'll be back.
For those who need context, a long time ago, this was way back in Circuits V1, towards the beginning, I think, trigger volumes used to be called trigger zones, and a bunch of people still call them trigger zones, myself included. I actually didn't realize the name changed until, like, probably last year. So
I think it changed, like, early last year, I think. Or maybe. I'm not too sure. Sometime last year, I think, it changed. Somebody, don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, I think... yeah, I think there was some post about it being changed, so I need to check that. But yeah, now that's sort of pretty much it for the history of Circuits V2 up until this point, which is, for what it wasn't that long, considering what's in store. So let's...
Now on to the future.
Yeah, so apart from, you know, Circuits V3, what's missing from Circuits V2?
So there's quite a bit of stuff you can do in Circuits V1 right now that you can't do in Circuits V2 yet. And addressing all of that stuff is, you know, obviously very important. We're focused right now on just bug fixing and quality stuff, and then after that we're hoping to push that parity with CV1 a little harder. But in terms of, like, I know we got a lot of questions in advance about, like, hey, will this chip be coming from CV1 to CV2? What about this chip? What about this chip? And the way we're approaching that is that we want you to be able to do the same things in CV2 as you could in CV1, but it might not be exactly the same way to get there. Like, it may not be a chip of the same name. It may look a little different. But we want you to be able to do the same things and more in CV2 as you could in CV1.
Yeah. So it's, yeah, pretty much, you'll be doing the same thing, but sophisticated. But British. But yeah, so that's sort of, I think I can probably say a little bit about that as a creator. Having sort of, what do you call it? Having that sort of, you know, access to, like, all the tools that you could with Circuits V1, that is probably one thing a lot of creators want the most, apart from, you know, go-karts. But yeah, like, being able to do everything that you could in Circuits V1 is what a lot of us really want. And, you know, I see people all the time, where's the game chip for Circuits V2, and I'm like, where's the you know, where's the player hit chip? And it's, you know, it is a little sad, but, you know, knowing that eventually we will get there is, you know, what sort of excites a lot of us creators the most. Seeing how, you know.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the
example.
day that Circuits V2 released, somebody had already built like a cross-communication channel between the two systems so that they can have all the chips in CV1 in CV2 and vice versa. To some degree with limitations.
What
Yeah.
So the
That's
game
how
chip
badly
is a
they
good
wanted it.
example of what I meant, though, because I don't know that we're going to make a CV2 game chip. I think we're going to make
Oh,
all the pieces for people to make their own CV2 game chips, and then buff up the invention system so that'll work as a way to get the equivalents to a game chip. But I don't think we're going to put out a CV2 game chip in the same way that CV1 had.
Yeah. Now, I do want to touch on the invention system as well. We'll get to that in a second. What I want to talk about first, though, is Circuit CV2. So, while, you know, it is our holy grail, it is our golden crab of crabs, I still really want to see some more improvements there, because there are a lot of problems, you know, authority, networking, and accessibility. So being able to sort of cover all those problems as well, how do you know, what is your plan for the future when it comes to those sorts of problems? So authority, networking, and accessibility. Those are the three main problems. So
one of our main plans, at least with networking, is to just make it a little easier to tell what's going on. That seems like the first step of that problem, right?
yeah.
Tyler, go ahead.
I was going to add on with a bit of a more long-winded answer. We actually spent some time last week coming up with a set of principles for circuits to guide its development. I want to highlight those right here, and then I'll talk about how some of those might feed into the questions you're asking. So the first one is we want circuits to be elegant. We want to strike a balance between usability and capability. This might have to do with the accessibility that you're talking about. In other words, we want to build circuits for the novice while still empowering experts. And one of the ways we want to do that is by automating difficult concepts rather than dumbing them out. Second one, we want circuits to be productive. We want a little bit of effort to do a lot of work. So building should be an adventure. Shouldn't feel like a chore. And if something must be done frequently, we want it to be able to be done quickly. Third one is reusability, and this has to do with the inventions. We want player creations to be indistinguishable from things in the palette. That means that inventions should be able to achieve the quality of content built in Unity. That means we will buff up our heat system, we will buff up our networking system, so that you guys have more resources to build the things you want. That way, you can rely on each other for creations rather than always relying on us. Fourth principle is friendliness. We don't want physicality to be a burden. In a normal programming language, you have things like functions, function calls, classes. We want to provide things like that, but we want to do them with quick, intuitive solutions rather than pop-ups in forms. We also want to expose as much information as necessary, but no more than that. So you don't want to have thousands of chips in the room if you only need to focus on a few of them. Finally, we want circuits to be obvious. We want to make sure that errors aren't hidden. If you have an error, you should know where and why, and finding a solution shouldn't require a PhD. Now, I'll repeat those principles one more time. Elegant, productive, reusable, friendly, and obvious. We're not saying that circuits is there today, but what we're going to do over the next year is move circuits in that direction. So hopefully that could give you a little bit of insight into our thinking about how we want to improve the system.
Is that design philosophy going to touch any of the existing chips that we have?
What we will probably do with existing chips, because we really want to maintain backwards compatibility, if we found out that there was a better way to do a light, for example, we'd probably just give you light v3 and then sort of hide light v2 in the palette. You'd still be able to use it. It would still be in Inventions. We do this with chips when we get rid of them. But people would be encouraged to use light v3, and we wouldn't break any of the old rooms or Inventions using light v2.
Got it.
Yeah, I just also want to say as well, a lot of my very early rooms, like my day one CV2 rooms, are horribly broken now, and you know, coming back to those rooms, you know, there is a bit of a balance there that you have to choose. Do I want this to work well? But I have to reconstruct it like 2 years later, or do I want this to, or do I want this to work how it was initially? And
I've got a quick question.
Striking that balance is, yeah, go ahead.
Are those beta rooms that are breaking?
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
that goes back to what we want the beta promise to be, right? Where if you use stuff that's in beta, we reserve the right to break it. But if it's out of beta, we're promising that it's not going to happen like that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, although I still did want to say, striking that, like, in terms of that balance, I feel like the beta, like the whole beta chips section, pretty much all of that, like, that is pretty much what the balance is, being able to go, okay, am I using a beta system? If yes, your room's going to break. If no, it should be fine, So I feel like that pretty much sums it up. Is anybody else got anything more to add for that? No? Okay, so let's move on to Inventions. Because I really want to, like, I feel like Inventions is not only the future of CV2, but the future of creation in general. I know for those of you who were at Gridley's keynote, he mentioned, one-click inventions, so one-click dorm skins, where you just click a button, it's in your dorm, And I feel like...
I can talk a little bit about that if you want.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I can talk about Inventions in terms of my aspirations for them. A lot of this is still not designed, it's just what I want it to be. As far as dorm skins go, that one in particular, I can talk about a little more concretely. I think we're just gonna... There'll be a new option when you create an invention that lets you attempt to spawn it wherever it was created. And in the dorm, that's going to be looking for a point that we put there, like the center of the dorm, basically. But there'll also be a component in the palette that you can spawn into the make room somewhere, and you can give it a unique name. And then you can still use that same system. So if you wanted to make, for example, a theater set for this room, and anybody who bought your template room could then buy your theater props and have them spawn on stage in exactly the right spot. You can set that up in the maker room too, using the same system. And then when you go into the invention info, there'll be a button that says spawn, and you can just click it without the maker room. And that should work for dorm skins too, because we really want to, like, that's the first thing people want to do, and that's such a good way into the creation system. That we want to let people kind of get to that magic before they go through all the work of learning the maker pen, which is a really complicated tool.
Yeah, one thing...
As far... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
As far as the rest of the invention system, like, one of the first things we're going to try to add is versioning. Basically a way for the creators to push an update to an existing invention, and then it'll notify everybody who's bought it, and they can go download an updated one and do the work of swapping it out themselves if they want. We can't update it for you because that's, one, really complicated, and two, might break your stuff. But it should be easy to go download another version of that invention, and then you'll have two of them in your palette. And you can put the new one in your rooms instead of the old one. But just giving the creators a way to update stuff is really important. And, okay, so now is where we get into the theoretical. I want to talk a little bit about essentially something that I hope Object Model will let us do for inventions, which is, you know how the CV2 rotators and stuff have an object board where you access all their circuits? Eventually, we want every object to potentially have an object board. Like if you say, I made a butterfly, it's got an object board because I say it does. And what we'd really like is for people to be able to put a bunch of stuff in that object board. Say you have a variable that is the butterfly speed. I can say, actually, this variable is a property, not just a variable. And they package the whole butterfly up into an invention. And you make it use only, so that the user is not supposed to be able to edit it at all. But they'll still have access to that object board, where you've set, you've exposed some of the circuitry explicitly for people to pipe stuff into. And then when you configure that butterfly, just like you configure any other prop, that variable you said was a property is there in the config menu. So I think that'll really help us kind of bridge the gap between what Inventions are doing now and what we really want them to be able to do, which is actually be as good as our in-game props, like we want them to be first-class citizens. So you need a way for people to interact with them without just giving up all of your edit permissions,
Yeah.
So
Have you...
none of that is designed or set in stone yet. That's just my ambitions, personally. So.
Yeah. One thing I want to say real quick.
Oh, go ahead.
Yes, sorry. One thing that I really think that you guys should probably steer towards more is the removal of the middleman, or in this case, the maker pen. And obviously don't delete the maker pen. Please don't delete the maker pen. But, in simple settings where it's like, okay, I need a dorm skin, new dorm skin. Just click of a button, dorm skin.
I mean, yep, I just described how that's going to work. And that one
so removing that from...
So I'm pretty confident about it.
Yeah, so removing that from a lot of situations, because obviously the maker pen can be quite daunting. You can pull it out and there's like a bunch of buttons and like, whoa, okay, and so slowly introducing them to that is probably what you want to go for. Mortimer, you want to...
Yeah, so I get that there's a lot of emphasis on making Inventions kind of friendly for new users. For the advanced users, I'm finding myself unable to use a lot of Inventions because we have to do like a lot of low-level optimizations for heat reasons or networking reasons. Things like we got to make sure that a certain thing will always run on a different frame than other things in the room, right? So when I try to use an invention, often what happens is I don't have the control, that low-level control, and I end up having to build it from scratch anyway, right? Has there been any thought into how inventions can be tailored towards advanced users as well, so that we don't run into heat issues?
There have, but I think... I think you're speaking to the heat issues that we need to solve anyway, right? We would like for that level of optimization to not be a concern, even for advanced users.
There's a couple of things that we're interested in doing to reduce these costs. So one, I mentioned earlier that we want to get the invention quality to be the same as something we can produce in Unity. A lot of that does have to do with heat. So we are looking into writing a different interpreter, a much more performant one. We think, up to 50 or 100 times more performant, and that should reduce a lot of the heat costs. I think also from a language level, we're going to need things like variables you could use without wiring. So for example, a language might have referenceable variables. You don't have to plug them in. They could traverse across scopes. We have that for events. We'll probably need to open that up to more things to make them performant enough to use. I think we're going to have to sort of tackle it from both ends, though, to suit your needs.
Right. And are you guys, in terms of invention, are you guys in for the design phase for Inventions, are you guys in community feedback gathering mode? Or are you still internally just looking at what the status quo is and how to improve upon that?
So I've actually...
Okay.
I've got a couple of documents. I've got one on making events and variables more efficient and reusable for Inventions. So that one I think people will just want no matter what. It's like, okay, well, if it could be faster, I don't think I need to ask the community. It's like they'll probably want it to be faster. And then same thing for heat performance. Before this panel, I was writing a document about how to improve heat. I think for other requests, if you have specific requests, I'd love to know. So feel free to share them in the Circuits V2 Discord. Ping me if you think you've got a clever idea. That would be a good way to share information.
As far as the invention flow, beyond the performance optimization stuff that Tyler was just talking about, we're still pretty early on that. We're waiting. A lot of it depends on how object model pans out, just because that influences such about what an object is and what its capabilities are. But the versioning is probably what will happen first. That isn't designed yet, but it is on the schedule.
Got it.
Well, no, the dorm skins are happening first, but then the version.
One thing I do want to ask, and this is touching on object model now, is I feel like we probably need to answer this question again, because it's been asked quite a lot, is what actually is object model? Because, you know, we hear it all the time, and, you know, a lot of creators still don't have a solid idea of what to expect with object model.
Yeah, I think there's two parts to that. One, a lot of it still feeds into that principle I was saying earlier, that we want to achieve the quality of things built in Unity. So right now you spawn a light from the palette that seems like something invented by Rec Room Inc. Like there seems to be something distinctly different between that and things players could create themselves. The same goes for a lot of things in the palette, like buttons feel like that, spawn points. Just there's so much special logic there that it's hard to implement in circuits that it doesn't seem like it'd be possible. Part of object model is to increase the breadth of things that players could create vastly so that there really is no difference between the things creators make and the things that we make in Unity. The other part of it is to provide a better building experience, and we think that's largely going to be a hierarchical building experience, like you'd see in many like professional game editing tools. That should allow us to increase things like ink. It should give us better capabilities for networking. In other words, you might only need to network the object as a whole rather than network each of its individual parts. I think probably, aside from the optimization aspect of it, the main way it will change building is that players will have access to those hierarchical capabilities. You put things in trees, move the top of the tree. Like if you move the body of the snowman, maybe the whole snowman moves with it. You kind of think of it as like an expansion of what shape containers do right now.
It sounds like all good things.
Yeah, and I can't wait to create Ego dorm room. That'd be great. Just have like Ego dorm room, empty game object dorm room. Like having that sort of hierarchical control would be absolutely amazing. And while obviously, you know, the Gizmos of old do a decent job at that, they still, you know, don't provide the greatest creator experience. And a lot of times you're sort of working with logic and going, okay, I need to put this rotator on this, and is that going to work? You know, it's a little sticky sometimes, you know. You know, it's yeah. So I feel like in that sense, you know, having that hierarchy control, definitely something that us creators would want, and yeah. So does anybody else have any comments on object model before we move on?
Yeah, I wanted to say something.
Yes. Go ahead.
So last time we did this panel, it was right when the very first thing about object model was thought about and like documented. And I remember we talked about it there. So I was just wondering, where do we stand now in the timeline of object model?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually.
Yeah.
There's two things there. We've been moving circuits in the direction of that I believe it was a document that was shared, and we've been moving circuits in that direction of that document. So that sort of shows how the chips would interact with the hierarchy. I'd say on the other end of that, we've actually started tech work on the object side of object model. So we've been doing circuits work for a while. We hadn't actually been looking into shapes. That's going on right now. And a lot of my, actually almost 100% of my personal time is spent investigating shapes. We're hoping to get more developers involved because it's been preventing me from advancing on circuits as quickly as we'd like. I'd say that we'll probably have something for the community the first quarter of next year. And it won't be a final thing. We're hoping to get some sort of prototype, maybe a beta. It might only go out to select players, like high trusted players, just to get their thoughts on it. But that's really when we're shooting to have something that's actually tangible.
On the design side, I've been working on the UX for that. I get to have a meeting with Tyleo Monday to argue about some of it. So that'll be fun, which I mean completely sincerely because it's always very exciting. But yeah, we're making progress. For a long time, like we did a lot of that early doc work well before the work actually started, but the work is underway right now.
Awesome.
So one recurring theme that I've noticed throughout this panel is, and just with the direction Circuit CV2 is going in general, is creating accessibility for not only, experienced creators, but new creators. And I feel like in that regard, I believe we've spoken about this before, tutorial. What are your comments on that? What are your thoughts on having some sort of tutorial for CV2? I know you guys have sort of started towards that by putting the tooltips in the CV2 palette menu, but what's that looking like now?
So right now, we are not close enough to finish with Circuit CV2 to tutorialize it, I think. My personal thought on that is that we need to kind of finish it, and then we can teach it well. And then at that point, we would love to do something as robust as the orientation scene. Something that's like really first party, really high quality. But before we can do that with any confidence, we have to be closer to finished. So right now, we're hoping to get those tooltips to be robust and consistent. We're working on in-game feedback. We've talked about how to debug CV2 a little better. And we're leaning really heavily on the classes that you guys teach, which are awesome. But we do need a tutorial once we're in the position to do it. If stuff were to keep changing after we made the tutorial, the odds of going back to update the tutorial decrease. So we want to be pretty sure about what we say in that when we say it.
Yeah.
Do you think, so on the topics of tutorials and some of the things that you mentioned seem kind of looping back a little bit to Inventions, but providing documentation for our circuit inventions seems pretty important. Do you think as part of that tutorial design we'll get ways to add doc strings to our ports and stuff?
I hope that the ability to comment through CV2 code comes long before the tutorial.
Got it. Okay.
We don't have firm plans there yet, but we just did that garden party internal project, and part of why we do that is to just really have concrete proof to be like, hey, actually, no, we really need this. Like, we had trouble doing this without it. And comments was something we talked about a lot for that. So it's definitely a discussion.
All right. So I feel like that probably wraps, in terms of the panel discussion up. There's just one more topic that I'd like to cover before we get to the Q&A. So stick around for that, because we'll be doing 1 hour long Q&A. So Circuits V2. Circuits but better. Circuits V1 but easier to use. Circuits V1 but with more golden crabs. I feel like I'm pretty sure this discussion has already been had, but I just want to touch on it again. CV2. We need a better name than CV2. What do you guys think?
Circuits.
Circuits.
Circuits. Circuits.
High five.
I agree.
Yeah.
Circuits. Just call it circuits from now on?
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
From now on, well,
CV1 can
Hold on.
No,
CV1.
we're not we're not making any distance right here. So it'll be circuits in the game. But I wish it were circuits, and maybe someday it will be circuits.
Yeah.
And on Discord, you should change the channel names. Circuits and Old Circuits, or Ye Old Circuits.
We're gonna
Legacy
rename Circuits V1 to Ye Old Circuits. Yes.
Ye Old Circuits. All right, so let's hop into some questions that we've been getting. So let me have a look.
Do you have any questions?
did
I
have
have one that someone asked that I thought.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
And I know that
ahead.
we
I
have
have the
something to say
same
about
one.
it. Yeah. So, it was Bucketman, I think, was wondering about being able to use code instead of circuits v2, and I know that that's not really something that is interesting, but I know there's something similar to that you were potentially interested in. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. So for us at Rec Room Inc., at employees in our company, it's very easy to make a chip. It's just a few lines of C# code. And I have been investigating sort of on and off whether we could get enough open source code out that some of the community could make their own chips. And then the process for that would be we'd have to sort of bless them and say, okay, we'll take this one, it's enough code, we code reviewed it, and we'll bring it into the game. There has been no progress on that since the last time I talked about it. I am the only person sort of fronting that up, and it's sort of, you could consider it like a side job for me. So if I were hearing a lot of people who are like, whoa, I definitely want to do that, it'd become more important for me. But right now I hear a lot more like, okay, increase ink limit, heat limit, and so on. So those are my priorities. In other words, I'm not saying it won't be done. I'm just saying it's not the top of the stack for me.
got it.
Awesome.
All right. Now, real quick, what I'm just gonna let you all know. If you guys will submit questions, there's, follow me real quick. There is a little thing right here. There's a Discord link. Join that and put your questions there. There's a chat called RecCon Questions. Put your questions there. So just so we've got one more centralized place. It's kind of difficult to read. The sign. Okay, it's just.
Too.
Yeah, good point. It's just discord.gg/yos. Like if you just type yos in the Discord invite, YOES or lowercase, you should be able to get in. It's that simple. Yeah. So here, I'll type it out just because simplicity. Very slow typer. Slow typing.
We do have a couple questions.
I have
we do have a couple
Yes,
questions
go ahead.
on the chat. I'm looking at the one from Squizzy. Are you going to make links supported on Oculus browser? So I guess this is a bigger design question of like, do you have any thoughts about adding links, link support? So like, if we have a Discord link, like what Yos was having, you could click a button and it would open in your browser locally or something.
That would be great. That is definitely not a CV2 thing, though. That would probably be some other team, so I don't really know if there are any plans for that. Like, probably that seems like the kind of thing they want to do, but I'm not up to date with it.
Yeah, I think I want to reiterate that it's not CV2, so I don't have like the best answer. Now, here's my foggy answer, which may be inaccurate. I believe that the experience was not good for those links. Like, I don't know if they all worked. I think some of them might have been broken or something. So I think we're sort of waiting for a better solution to come along for that so that you don't just get like a bunch of broken links. Now, I don't know 100% that that's what it is. It's not really the circuits team to answer that. I could try to see outside of this if someone else has more information.
Got it. Jeff, do you have any questions that you caught in the chat?
I didn't know if you had any, so I was just gonna ask a joke one, but I won't ask the joke one anymore.
I'll
I
check
did
the
see
Discord.
one. I did see one a while ago, and maybe it's appropriate to be covered. What do we think? What do you think about seats and them being in beta still? Is there like a timeline on that?
So
And maybe
seats were...
sorry,
Okay.
I just want to say maybe in general, like what is the length that you can expect something to stay in beta? But you don't have to cover that if you don't want to.
I mean, I kind of covered it earlier, so this may just be a rehash. But stuff comes out of beta when we are pretty sure internally that it isn't going to change significantly, which we can't really put a hard timeline on, and especially not one that's the same for every asset. Seats in particular, we're still in beta because there's one behavior that was technically a bug, but we were talking about whether or not it should just be the default behavior. But I think they're coming out really soon.
Yeah, I actually have more information on
Gribbly
that.
all caps soon. Okay, cool.
So right now, I believe you could sit in an invisible seat. Is that accurate? You could like select it and
You could grab an
interact with it.
invisible seat, yeah. That was the behavior that
So-
was a bug, yeah.
That is a behavior that is specific to seats, and we were going to disable that behavior. We found out the community liked it a lot, so it sort of put us in a difficult spot, because now it's like we want seats to react like everything else in the game, but the community found this behavior that's not really supported that they want. So actually what it kicked off was a larger design on like how should people interact with objects? Can we change how you interact with all objects so we can make interactions while they're invisible? And that, like, because of that, we're kind of like, okay, we're probably going to need to do that larger interaction work so that we could bring seats out of beta without breaking rooms and still let people have the sit in invisible seats interaction. So that's kind of like kicked the can down the road on seats in particular.
Oh, that's funny. The whole invisible seat grabbing thing, we're actually using that heavily in one of our rooms. I have just now learned that it wasn't intended, so...
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
exactly, you're exactly like the use case. Like, wow, this is a great functionality. And then
So
it's like,
that's
oh
why
man, it
seats are
was
still in beta.
unintended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we do have some questions on the Discord. If we want to... One really
Yeah,
one here from Alatori. CV2 has had a long and complicated rollout process. What things have gone really well from a development standpoint, and what things have gone really poorly?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised. I'm curious what part is complicated, if we could get more feedback there. Maybe it's just I'm on the inside, so it's clear to me.
All right.
That'll have to come from them. I mean, I could interpret it a bit. I think maybe they're talking about from the Rec Room standpoint. It seems complicated with the whole beta system and like having limited inventions and all of this stuff.
I would say that
So I guess they were looking
is
for some
probably just a
insight.
symptom of
Yeah.
how big it is. Like, it's a lot bigger than most of the stuff we make. This is a way more comprehensive system than a lot of the stuff we tend to put out. So we're just trying to be careful with it. We're trying to be responsible towards stuff people make as we go along so that we're not breaking stuff just the whole way. And I think, I feel like it's actually gone pretty well for the most part, given that it is such a big system.
Yeah, I was gonna.
We're probably the one place where we probably should have thought through that a little better before we committed to it. Variables and AI.
So
Got it.
I think this goes back to that seat thing, where it's like, okay, let's say we didn't have the beta system. What would have happened with seats? We probably would have like shipped them with this bug, and then we would have had a tough discussion about like, okay, well, do we fix the bug, and then we're going to break rooms, and now we wouldn't have like a path forward to help the community without breaking it, and we wouldn't have a design that would like let us make more objects interactable while they're invisible. I think you will see this pattern on more UGC features coming out in the future, like outside of circuits. The mirror is actually a good example. Like that's also in beta. And the UGC systems as a whole, I think we're going to be more careful with because we do have a backlog of things where players started depending on stuff We didn't want to break it, but it was also impacting things like heat limits, ink limits, and we kind of got checkmated in the game of design chess to make improvements.
Got it.
Yeah. Is that the end of that question? Because I have a really interesting one right here that's staring me right down in the face, and I'm like, oof, I want to say it. What's up, bro? Said, will set authority be added? Simple
That's
yes
a
or no.
great question. I actually don't know. There's some people on the team who want it. There's some people on the team who don't want it. So there's not consensus, so we aren't adding it right now. There's no plans to add it right now. We do have plans to make authority easier to work with without a set authority chip. We're probably going to have to wait to act on those plans and then check again and see like, okay, did we fix the problem another way? Is this still needed? There's some belief that like if we have the set authority chip, you could break rooms in pretty bad ways. I know from the community, there's like specific things they want to do that they can't do right now. And the smarter members of the community could do it with a set authority chip. We're trying to balance a lot of things there. I'm sorry to say, I don't know. I'd say no is the plan right now. It's subject to change in the future.
Yeah, so your answer for now is no. But yeah. I like for me personally, I just want to say set authority is, as a creator, advanced creator, set authority is something that needs to be added. That's from my point of view. And you know,
yeah, I guess
I'm pretty
we'll
sure
check again next year.
Yeah, come back next year.
Yeah. Put it on Canyon vote. If
put it in the county.
Everybody in the game wants it. It's hard for us to ignore.
Yeah. Now, does somebody else want to take a question, or would you like me to?
Yeah, I see another one on the Discord here. Sand Planet asks, when will the trigger handle gizmo be released? And will it output a float value based on how hard the trigger is pressed?
I've got a great answer for you. I believe the trigger handle will be released in 2 weeks. It will not output a float value. We went back and forth on the float value. Originally, we weren't going to do the float value. Then we were going to do it, so I might have said that in Discord. Now we're not going to do it again. We reserve the right to add the float value in the future, but I think people will be happy to have it now quickly rather than not have anything and wait, months for us to figure out the float value.
Got it.
Got it. So are you saying that the float value was not added so that you can just go, here you go?
Basically it's impossible to get nuanced input out of a lot of platforms. So anything that was made relying on some value that is between 0 and 1 but not 0 or 1 is just going to be broken on a lot of our platforms. So until we know how to resolve that in a sane way, we're just giving you 0 or 1. Yeah,
okay. So it is a little upsetting, and obviously it would require a lot of time and investigation into that sort of thing. So
have you guys have you had any interesting ideas on how to add a float value for platforms that don't have that gradient trigger pull? Like maybe
talked
like
about it a little,
if time held or something.
Yeah, we've talked about it some. That is ultimately a question for the experience team, which handles all of our avatar behavior stuff. So I think it's probably going to get solved someday.
Got it.
But it isn't on us, and they're really busy with the next RRO, so they don't have any time to do it right now. So.
Right.
Yeah. And wait, is that next RRO referring to Rec Rally, or is that...
I have been told to encourage people to go to the new RRO panel tomorrow about that. Although didn't Gribbly mention keynote, so whatever. I asked about it yesterday, and they were like, don't say anything, just tell people to go to the thing. All right, well, go watch the trailer, I guess.
Yeah, go watch the trailer.
I don't know why they be so quiet about it.
But yeah, so Rec Rally, if you guys don't know, it's a new Rec Room original. It's been announced. It's on the YouTube channel. Check it out. There's a trailer. So yeah,
it's really fun.
But If you're watching this on YouTube, don't go anywhere. Yeah, I'm locking you to this tab. You can't leave this tab. But if you're not watching this on YouTube, why aren't you?
We do have a question in chat that is somewhat related to Rec Rally, and that is from King Matt. Will there be some kind of car circuits or gizmos?
Yeah, so...
is that shipping with Rec Rally, or is it coming a little later? I don't remember.
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to say two things. A little bit of an inside joke. Rec Rally was actually announced a year ago at this panel. And then...
Yeah. It was I actually forgot to mention that.
But anyways, with regards to the circuits, we've already signed off on the code review, so I think those will be coming also in a week or two.
Those are also really fun. I've gotten to play with those a little, and they are very exciting.
Yeah, I don't want to promise a week or two, but they're like actively underway, so pretty soon.
They're rolling. They're rolling here.
When we talked about vehicles earlier, we said that the plan was to release like a go-kart thing, and then release the vehicle from it, and then eventually release all the components separately. And I think that is still the plan. So this is what you'll get is the vehicle. You won't get all the bits for the vehicle, but that will come eventually.
Okay, so
but
we're getting a vehicle
cool and customizable. It's pretty customizable.
And
I think you'll enjoy it.
All right, I'm excited. And I think everybody else from that announcement, oh my god, everybody else is... That's so exciting.
I have a question from Discord.
Yes, go ahead.
So Nolan says that they have a question regarding the hierarchy system with object model. What does this mean for gizmos? Because currently we can connect objects in a sort of way by connecting them with gizmos. So what does that look like in an object model world?
So you'll basically be kind of getting the same result in a post-object model world. You probably won't have to do the stupid fiddly thing you have to do today where you drag to like a particular part of the gizmo. They'll just be a level of the hierarchy like any other object, and then their parent will act like the current parent and the child will act like the current child. Like that's the hope, is that they basically do the same thing and they fit more neatly into the hierarchy because it's a real hierarchy and you're not making a fake one with gizmos.
Has there been any thought of like what this means for currently existing gizmos?
There have. I don't know that I'm up to date on the plan for old rooms versus...
There's two points to that. I want to call out one thing earlier. I just talked to the dev lead for Rec Rally, and he wanted me to mention that the vehicle scripting capabilities will be released in beta. So those will be beta vehicles in the palette. Now to cover the gizmos in object model, we're looking at two things. We're looking at a new room. So this would be like you almost think of it as a V2 room where some of the old stuff wouldn't work. Like maybe Circuits V1 wouldn't work at all. And then maybe there's just totally new types of gizmos in that room. And we slowly have to make more and more things capable. That's sort of model one. We're not 100% sure which model we'll take. And then model two would be, we try to get everything to interoperate. That would probably mean that we keep old gizmos. So like you have Circuits V1 gizmos, and maybe they can't connect to object model objects, or they're somehow isolated from it. But then you'd have like Gizmos V2, and those would work hierarchically. You'd put things underneath them to get them to rotate, move, etc. Those are sort of what we're looking at. We haven't 100% settled on either one.
Gonna have to figure it out though. Like, that's definitely a big part of our conversations right now. Like, okay, well, now that we know how it's gonna work, how do we roll it out?
I'm not too sure if this is a question. It's more of an idea, and I got it from one of my friends who just messaged me. He said, hold on, let me read this out. What if we were able to send executions by clicking by clicking the trigger on the circuit? So, like, let's say, pretty much like send test event, but
Yeah,
you
that's
had
a
your
debug
make pen and
feature
you
that
could just...
I'd really like that as a debug feature. It's something we've talked about. I don't know that it's hype ranked, but it's
it's
been discussed
we
at
actually
least on the design side. It's like, oh, this would be cool.
at the very beginning of Circuits V2, we actually had that working, and then we broke it. It's just a matter of somebody bringing it back. I mentioned earlier that we want to make debugging more obvious. There'll probably be a big debugging push at some point. I don't know whether that's going to be next quarter, so between October and December, or the quarter after that. But that's when we would start to investigate stuff like that.
Yeah, and one other thing on object model as well, because speaking about like, you know, times and stuff, I remember Q1 2022 was the last estimate to when we started seeing bits and pieces of object model. When is that looking like it's going to be the same, or are we going to be seeing it pushed back or delayed?
So I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier. We're trying to get something into the community's hands Q1 of next year. And again, I don't know if that's going to be for everybody in the community. We might just have like a few top creators look at it. It might be a special room that's only available for a little bit of time, but or it might be fully done if we're fast. That's when I would expect to see something that's tangible.
Okay. Now, one other question, because I've been pinged, I've been messaged, I can see it in the chat. Delocalized objects, so pretty much
Wait.
not synced objects.
So he wants synced objects,
desynced.
delocalized, so not localized. Got it. Well, we already got that.
Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah. Well, I know what he means by it. I know what he means by it. He means desynced. So objects which are, so let's say my streamer cam's there, but you know your streamer cam is up on Mars or something. You know.
Yeah.
Or
So
like having like my cube and your cube being different, you know?
We started desyncing some of the data. I believe lights and maybe a couple other things now let you set values that are different on different players. The physics is sort of like a special case, and it's very difficult right now. Initially, we weren't going to do it at all, and then after talking to the community, it's something that like people really want to be able to do it. It is not the highest priority thing for us. We're investigating whether it'll be possible for object model. I wouldn't expect that until like sometime into next year, if it happens at all. Probably second half of next year, and even then, it could be pushed further out if we think other things are higher priority.
Yeah.
I can say that a lot of times, and especially in my building experience, Maker Pen shapes end up being our primary UI. Like we have symbols, icons built out of Maker Pen shapes that are UI, and oftentimes that UI is only meant for one person.
Well, I will say that
could
we'd love if you had better UI tools. We don't want you to have to bend over backwards and desync shapes and do all this custom stuff. Oops, my controller died. Pardon my spinning. In order to get a UI, you should have a sane way to do that, other than all the shape stuff. So we hear that use case usually about UI, and we're taking it as a need for good UI tools. But if the need for desynced shapes still exists outside of the UI use, then we'll keep talking about it.
Okay.
All right. One question that I have now, I'm pretty sure they mean something else by this, but with the addition of the consumable chips, will an add consumable and remove consumable chip be added? Now, I'm pretty sure that's already a thing, but I think they mean something differently by that, because they continue with, it would make inventory systems a lot more easier for collecting games and RPGs. So, yeah, do
I've got
you maybe want to
information.
touch on that?
So the consumable chips and the chips that deal with currency are actually built by another team. They're built by our economy team. And people are spending real money to buy some of those consumables or room currencies. So we have extra security measures we need to put in place for those chips specifically. Therefore, I don't think we will be doing remove consumable chips or remove currency or anything like that, unless it comes with like significant constraints and we could prove that it's secure. So that's sort of why the design of those things is the way it is. Now, for inventory management in general, if you're just making a game with an inventory, I consider that a different problem than room consumables. Like, assuming you had no consumables, no currencies, no economy features at all, you might still want to build an inventory system. I think we're going to need to make the language side of circuits more advanced. So, like, players will want to be able to define custom types. They might want dictionary types in addition to lists. That stuff will probably come first half of next year, hopefully. And with that, you should be able to construct higher level logic that lets you build some of those systems.
Yeah. All right. Sweet.
Another question in the Discord here. Ost says, I notice lists don't have the option to become synced variables. Is there a reason for that, and will it be something added in the future?
It's actually a performance reason. It's just expensive to send all that data across the network. We have difficulty, as you may know, just sending the current amount of data. People are frequently running out of networking heat. So we could actually do the technical work pretty easily. I think there's an optimization step we'll want to do before that makes everything better, so that when people get synced lists, they're not unusable from heat constraints.
So it's actually really interesting that you mentioned this, and maybe this is going to be a bug, but in the Grimecraft room right now, we are emulating synced lists by sending a synced event every half a second that is syncing all the lists in the room. What are your thoughts on that? Because we're well within the net heat, and it seems to work.
It's not actually a bug. The synced variables are synchronized differently than events. This has to do with our networking architecture. I'm actually, like, one of the optimizations we might make is to just do both of those things the same way and do them the way that uses less bandwidth. That perhaps would let you do the same thing with sync variables as you're doing with RPCs right now. RPCs are what are used for events.
Got it. Right. Let's see. So let's see if there's a...
I think there's a question by Nolan that I might want to...
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we're connecting. Our brainwaves are connecting.
So
if you want to go ahead with that.
I have a question regarding the hierarchy system discussed earlier during the object model discussion.
We got
Yo's said that a hierarchy
one.
system... We did? Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
That was for the Gizmos with object model.
Got it.
Okay,
I
didn't see that one.
There was a question a while ago that I wanted to get covered. I can't remember who it was from, but somebody was asking about AI. So it seems like a lot of the AI system hasn't been touched in a while. All the AI CV2 stuff hasn't been touched in a while. Is there any reason for that? Are there any plans or any future plans that we can anticipate?
So the main reason that the AI hasn't been touched in a while, that was really, really early. That was one of kind of the first big things we did for CV2, as far as I remember. And we had to make a bunch of decisions that are ultimately not very, very good in terms of the overall hygiene of the system. It kind of breaks a lot of rules. It kind of restricts you to do the things that our AI does. It's hard to make anything with that AI system that isn't an enemy that tries to kill you, So we want to break it down more like we have everything else in CV2, just to let you do more stuff with it, essentially. So we haven't revisited it because we don't think a lot of the decisions we made originally were good ones, and we don't want to go further. We don't want to double down on bad decisions. We want to remake better decisions.
Right.
Yeah, I want to elaborate a little bit on that. So I would not expect any additions to the existing AI system in the near term. And like Godzilla said, if they come, they might be in a new system. Separately, we just don't have a ton of developers who can build that system right now. I mentioned this a couple of times throughout, but we're sort of like prioritizing what we think is most important. That means that I'm not even working on circuits right now. I'm working on the object model stuff we talked about earlier. There's kind of like a skeleton crew who's still trying to port the remaining bits of CV1 that aren't in CV2 yet.
Got it.
I will say that we would like to do something like, instead of having a goblin that you adjust the settings on, we have a gizmo that like is a pathfinder, and you can attach it to a thing you made out of tubes and have it do the navigation part. And then you can make the brain out of circuits and have it tell the navigation part what to do when. So we're trying to push it more that way. And as a goblin, you can adjust some numbers on.
Yeah. One question, and I've seen this from pretty much everybody that I know that does advanced CV2 has asked, list contains is they're not happy with the state of list contains at the moment. There's like getting an index is probably like the key part that they want there. So obviously there's multiple ways you can do that. You can get the amount of times it happens in the list, like every single, like a list of every single index, and yeah, I just wanted to know your thoughts on that. What are the plan? Are there any plans for list index? Any plans to change it?
We will. Well, we won't change the existing one, but we will be providing an index chip. I don't have a timeline on that either. That'll probably just come at random someday, probably sooner rather than later. It'd actually be a pretty thing. I'll communicate with some people this week and see how quickly we could get that out.
All right. Because one thing that I do kind of want to see, and I feel like this design is sort of brilliant, is just add like a list of all the indexes, because then what you can do is with that list you can get the amount of times it appears, the first time it appears, the last time it appears, and you can also use that list to iterate over every single index as well. So I feel like just using a list of all the indexes would be the perfect design for that. So yeah.
I'm writing this down. We'll probably give you two things. You'll probably get just a get index chip, which will just give you the first index. They'll call it get first index. And then we'll provide what you just said, which is, I'll see if we could give you something that gives you a list of all the indexes. The reason I want to do both is because getting all those indexes is going to be more expensive. Like if you just need the index, which I bet a lot of people will need, they're not going to want to pay the cost of having a whole new list and everything.
Yeah, of course. All right, sweet.
And that first chip is more of how most languages do it anyway. It's like get first index.
Yeah.
So.
And then we got a helicopter in the room.
So Nancy was asking, can we get more information about a new leaderboard system? And also, what about leaderboard support for RecNet? So I know that's not super CV2 related, but at least chips that give us abilities to update. Okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, those will be out in the next few weeks, actually. So we've also just signed code for some leaderboard chips. These don't vastly expand the leaderboard system. They just make it accessible from Circuits V2. So just within the next few weeks, you'll see those, probably in beta.
Yeah, we'll probably eventually do a bigger overhaul of the leaderboards that adds a bunch of functionality, but right now we wanted to just give you, just a way to get at that data from CV2. So
yeah, this does remind me of kind of a question that I have. I've been reached out to before about like API support for like RecNet, and this is for like more advanced users, but in terms of the design for the cloud variables and the design that's going into Leaderboard, has there been thought about API access to that data? so that like creators can build websites that kind of integrate what their rooms are doing or something along those lines.
Yeah, I've talked to the server team just a tiny little bit about this, and it's just not top of the stack for them. So I think there's some interest to do it. I can't give a timeline on it. It's something I would personally love to provide, but it's more a matter of a bit like number of people we have working on things. We just don't have enough to do it right now. So maybe someday.
Right. Maybe someday.
Yeah.
You heard it here first.
Someday. So yeah, I feel like we are sort of getting close to the end. So what we'll do is we'll take a couple more questions and then we'll wrap off, and we'll wrap up, and each of us will sort of close it off there. So let's get a few more questions. So once again, if you haven't already, if those of you would like to follow me, there is a Discord link right here, discord.gg/yos. If you can't see it, I'll type it out. And so there's a chat in there, just full of questions, so go ahead and ask, and I'll type it out here as well.
Somebody has been asking about the invisible collision. It seems to be a little bit neglected in terms of CV2 support, or maybe just hasn't been gotten to.
Hasn't been gotten
to. It's on the list.
Yeah, got it. It's on the list.
It's on the
somebody
list.
was asking about subtitles, which I don't know a lot about actually.
We have done a little bit of work on this lately, at least on the design side. I'm not sure. Did that make it in?
2 weeks. That's another 2 weeker. So 2
Sweet.
weeks from now, you should see those in the palette.
So
Got it.
by the way, for those of you who don't know, it's subtitles are pretty much show notification, but they don't completely blind you for 30 seconds. But no, seriously,
nice, yeah.
If you guys have played orientation,
I think we may have given you some control over the time limit of show notification as part of that work. I hope so.
ooh, okay. But yeah, no. So the show notification, So if you played orientation, you would remember that there's some text right at the bottom of your screen. So that in itself, that's pretty much what I remember it would look like. Is that what it's still looking like, or have you guys completely changed the design of it?
I don't know exactly. Sorry.
I think exactly.
It's basically that. I think it's basically just
basically
that.
Basically that. Okay, sweet. All right, let's see. Do we have any more questions? Let's have a look.
I do have a wrap-up question that I would like whenever we're ready to end.
Sure. So So Bot asked about volumes that trigger when detecting bullets, so projectiles or stuff like that. So like hit detection for circuits V2. Anything to say on that?
No, unfortunately, that's a great one because it actually hasn't been on our radar. I'll look into it, but because it hasn't been on our radar, probably something much farther out.
All right. That's unfortunate. I know a lot of people are still... I guess the trigger gizmo will be kind of remedy some of this. A lot of people are using still pots and plates as kind of hit detectors for causing damage to stuff, but maybe...
I hope we can get more generic than a volume. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we can put it on an object to say, hey, you can detect when this object got hit with the thing.
Right. I was going to say trigger might pair well with raycast for getting some of that information.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, so you kind of reverse.
Yeah. I have one question. So CV2 mass wiring and or mass configuring. Now, before you answer this, I do want to add my own little spin on it. imagine you've got like a whole row of circuits, you pull the trigger, and then you do your stuff, and then by the time you let go of the trigger, the whole thing is wired exactly how you want. So you wire from circuit to circuit without even letting go. You're just like dum speed run. Because I know a lot of the time spent when it comes to wiring is aim, okay, and then we're going to put that there, okay, wait, got to get it right, let go, and then get the next one and do that over and over. But being able to just, paint it out, that would be amazing. So what are your comments on that?
I think that falls into that principle I outlined earlier. I'm trying to find the exact one. It is productivity. If something must be done frequently, it can also be done quickly. So you've outlined a specific implementation. I'm not sure that we would go with that implementation exactly, but I'm aware that wiring can be a pain when you have to do it thousands of times in a row, and we will be making it faster.
All right, sweet. Now I believe Jeff had a question for us to wrap up.
Yeah, are we ready? Okay. So I guess that's the end of the Q&A session then. So I just wanted to ask, it's been just over a year since Circuits V2 came out of beta. There's been a lot of changes and a lot of improvements, a lot of additions, and a lot of plans. So I just wanted to ask everyone on this panel, and I guess we'll start from Mortimer. How do you feel about what's been going on with Circuits V2, and how do you feel about its future? Do you like the spot that it's in?
Well, I'll be honest, still a little bit distraught about heat limits. Still, I got pretty disappointed with the chip limits, and the net heat is kind of like another one of those things that is a little difficult to work around. But it's good to hear the plans to kind of address those, and I hope that I can provide feedback on whether or not those solutions will be adequate and sufficient. But yeah, as far as like the power of the system goes, we've been able to do some incredible things. Like I said, you guys should all check out the Grimecraft room. That is like some really cool stuff. Yeah, and then we have lots of big projects as part of Ink Overflow that are all using CV2. Pretty happy overall.
All right, Yos.
All right. This is going to be a very, very long-winded answer, but we'll get there. So my start off with Circuits V2 was like going through all the teasers and stuff and trying to figure out, okay, how does this work? I wanna figure this out. And I remember at the same time I was starting to get into teaching as well, and I'm like, you know what? Why not make a class? And that's what I did. I made the Circuits V2 transitional class, and I released like a document before Circuits V2 even released, with a pretty accurate guess as to how it would work. Then teaching the Circuits V2 class, and then after that we had the merge, where we merged 3 classes together into one, and yeah, just from there, it's the rest is sort of history. Circuits V2 is pretty much what a lot of people know me for, and I'm very grateful in the path that it's been taken, and I really want to be able to shape the future as well of Circuits V2 in any way I can. I'm really excited with where Circuits V2, like the direction it's been taken and where it's going, and I'm like, I love Circuits V2. It's pretty much everything that I am in Rec Room, and knowing that it's not going anywhere, I'm really excited, and I can't wait to see where it goes, So yeah.
Oh. All right. Do you want to share, Talia?
Yeah, I'm thrilled with how Circuits has turned out. We have a great community. Tons of players are using it. All of you have, on this panel, have built amazing rooms with Circuits. I think it's beyond my expectations. Beyond that, we also have a lot of players who get into programming through Circuits. So Circuits is really people's like first interaction with scripting or logic or something engineering like. I mean, my job is as a developer, as an engineer. So when I was a kid, learning logic, learning programming was life-changing for me. And I'm just really happy that I could have the same sort of impact on other people. It sort of really feels like you're making the world a better place by teaching those skills.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the future of CV2. Like, I think we're in a really good place. I think we've done a really good job of setting ourselves up to really keep building on it long term and have everything be seen and make sense and be powerful. And yeah, I'm pretty pleased with it.
Awesome. I'll answer the question too. I'm kind of in a similar boat as Mortimer. I'm feeling the heat limits pretty hard. I feel pretty comfortable with Circuits V2, so most of the time I'm thinking about how to avoid heat limits rather than actually doing the thing that I want, unfortunately. But I'm super excited for the future, especially object model. I want functions real bad. So I'm excited.
Me too.
Well,
I also want functions real bad.
In saying that, I think we should all probably all hop out here and oh, that's my microphone. I need to stand up. Oh, you know what? I'll stand up like this. So yeah, everybody, thank you so much for coming. Today has been absolutely amazing. We had a bunch of amazing discussions, announcements, you know, and you know, little teasers, stuff like that, and learning about, you know, Circuits V2 and where it's headed. I'm really grateful that all of you could come here today, and I'm really grateful for all of you as well who had stuck around to the end and, you know, listened to our panel. So yeah. Thank you. My name's Yoz, and this was the future of Circuits V2. And yeah, hope you guys enjoy RecCon.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Enjoy RecCon.
Bye, thank you.
All right, how do I disable broadcasting?
Ha! I guess we can't disable